The easy part is this: being dropped off in a remote location about 2 hours outside of Boulder, Colorado. The harder part is this: working with a team of individuals to choose what is essential to hike out of the wilderness and what items should be left behind. Participants are informed that they get to choose how much food, clothing, medical gear, and water they want to carry to ensure they're able to survive the next few days of grueling experiences as they attempt to reach a finish line several miles away. They will encounter unknown weather conditions, terrain, and other obstacles on their way toward their destination. Now, one would think that the amount of and type of clothing you take and how much depends on the weather you expect to encounter, and how much food you carry would depend on your expectations to find additional edible items while hiking in the wild, or deciding how much water is a safe amount to carry, while recognizing the more water you take, the more you will use, as carrying the weight of the water and other provisions will wear you out faster and cause you to drink more. Now, of course, all of this may sound like the opening to a television reality show like Survivor or The Amazing Race. However, there is no Jeff Probst nor medical team standing behind any cameras ready to rescue you. There's also no prize of $1 million nor a TV contract waiting for you when you and your team reach the end of the course after an intensive 7 days. The only reward following this challenging event is the experience and education gained from using practical survival skills and the great outdoors, which will prepare you for a time when you ever encounter a worst-case scenario or a natural disaster, or any event that would demand a series of survival skills that you will need to gain while you attend a week of wilderness survival training camp called SEER, which is based on the Green Beret program, except this one's for civilians. Each participant on the team, before being stranded, will have taken the necessary training by a SEER trainer who will teach the group the 5 basic survival needs: signaling, so one can signal for help; personal protection, like clothing and creating a shelter; basic health care for injuries sustained while trying to go through the obstacles. And then there's travel techniques, which just creates a whole category of itself, like how to tie ropes, brush one's teeth without a toothbrush, bathe with the things that nature provides, avoid the poison oak and poison ivy, and how to forage for safe to eat foods, as well as how to make fire using only what's available in nature, which, by the way, is much harder than one thinks. Fire looks so easy to make. Psh. Everyone then on the team must learn these basic skills in order to advance to the next stage of the SEER training, as these skills are absolutely essential for navigating the hazards to pass the survival training at the end of the week. And when the students stand in front of the possible items to take on their journey to their destination, they will know what is important, and they will know how to survive because of their extensive training course. Similar to the SEER training, our gospel reading in Mark reads like a survival training manual for the church, with Jesus as the head instructor. Jesus warns his students about what they can expect as their days of comfort and security will come to an end, as they are dropped off in the middle of a world deep in conflict and turmoil. They will experience hunger and thirst, war and betrayal. They will trip over obstacles in life and at times feel like they've walked off one of those cliffs in Colorado as their faith is challenged. Jesus also warns his students they will encounter world-changing events that will take a spiritual, mental, and physical toll. Specifically for Jesus' immediate students, he warned them of destructive forces which occurred 30 years after Jesus' persecution, resurrection, and ascension, when the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. Following this destruction was a period of unrest as the area experienced war, and the early church, which consisted of both Jews and Christians, were expelled from the Holy Land. The apostles had to flee for their lives, and for a long time they had to keep looking over their shoulder as they experienced life on the run. surviving on whatever they could find to provide protective shelter, food, and warmth. Today, we may not necessarily live life on the run nor fear assassination plots. Yet there are days that COVID certainly seems to test our mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. It can also place a strain on our faith and our faith community. And there are still places in the modern world where Christians are threatened. Where, as we know, several weeks ago, several Canadian Christian missionaries have been taken hostage by a gang in Haiti. Though we pray for their quick and safe release, they, like us, have been cautioned that our faith can land us in trouble. And as we explore the teachings of Jesus this morning, we discover he didn't just provide lessons for our mere survival. We also discover that he provided us lessons to help us thrive. The first lesson in the SEER program and from Jesus is to have hope for the future and to celebrate. This will help with survival and with our ability to thrive as Jesus followers. See, it's often easy to stress over things that we cannot control or experience anger or guilt over a situation, wondering what we could have done to change something so we could experience a different outcome. Yet in the SEER program, students are taught to reflect on the past, but don't dwell on it so that it mentally defeats you. Rather, they are instructed to take each moment and break it down into manageable chunks so that prepares them for the next obstacle they will experience. SEER students are also taught to celebrate even the smallest victories, like getting up in the next morning, or celebrate the fact you didn't get sick. These are worth celebrating, and in the life of the church, we ought to celebrate our tiny victories, as these will strengthen the life of our church and our faith community. A second teaching is to keep our priorities simple and clear. When the SEER teams are selecting what they will take into the field, many might be tempted to take as much food as possible, as the essentials to survival break down to one of those basic needs. And naturally, food always seems to be at the top of the list. Food, water, shelter, and medical care. However, if they observe their SEER training, water actually has the highest priority, while food, along with the other items in the basic needs list, are at the bottom. And regarding clothing, one can always add insulation to their clothing just using leaves and things they find in nature. Shelter can also be found or created using branches and things in nature. And basic medical items, which might be needed, could be found as well, like using tree limbs to help with a twisted ankle, or using leaves and vines to create a temporary Band-Aid for small cuts. And though we all enjoy food, most persons can go days without food. However, a person cannot go too many days without water. Typically, 3 days is the max a person can go without water. And since clean water is essential to our bodies, it receives the highest priority. And you're encouraged to take as much as every person can safely manage. As this relates to our spiritual health, the priority for our well-being is to remain connected to God through prayer and through meditation, so that we drink in the living water that comes from Christ. Recalling what is imperative to our Christian journey, prayer and remaining connected with God through ministerial care, and recalling that all the other stuff is just stuff. Money, programs, building, and so forth, it's just stuff. The important thing to our Christian journey is the community, being connected to each other and being connected to God. Third on the list is the reminder that survival and thriving take practice. One of the most vital survival skills in the wilderness is the need to master building a fire. Fire can boil water to make newly found sources of it safer to drink. It can help warm our inner core, which can help with health as it improves morale. And SEER students are taught to build a fire and have water boiling in less than 15 minutes. I'll tell you what, you're going to all end up dead if you try that with me. 2 days later, we might have fire. For those of you who have ever camped with me, you know it's much easier sounding than it really is in reality. But yet, according to the instructors, it comes down to who rehearses it and who doesn't, who's practicing building fire and who isn't. And then this idea is largely what Jesus is saying to his disciples when he prepared them for what is to come, declaring that his followers needed to constantly prepare for the days ahead. As he said, keep alert, stay awake, and watch. You know, despite all the seminary training or Christian education courses or daily devotionals we may have read, there's no better way of learning how to do ministry and handle crises than actually going through it. Whether it's a Category 3 water flood experience here at church, a global pandemic which teaches us how to care for each other, or when racism or injustice are encountered in our culture. As we experience these things together, we learn how to do ministry, and these things equip us with necessary tools so we witness God act in our world. And it also helps us to remember that we reflect God in our lives and in our living. Fourth on the list is that survival and thriving take imagination. In the SEER program, participants learn quickly that when they encounter a problem or a challenge, they can't spend a whole lot of time dwelling on it. They have to be quick on their feet as they improvise and imagine possibilities to discover solutions. The same holds true in our community of faith. When we encounter challenges which threaten our communal ties, or when we face a crisis to take care of each other, at these times, it can take some serious out-of-the-box creativity to discover solutions. Solutions which enable us to rise to meet the need, all while recognizing that God is in our midst. And it's God who helps and equips us with wisdom, with voices, hands, and love, so we are empowered to overcome and deal with the challenges. And finally, the last teaching is that survival and thriving are the norm. In the SEER program, the instructors remind their students that what they are learning actually isn't anything new. The things we need have not changed: water, food, and shelter. The only thing that has changed is how easy it is to obtain these items or find them in the wilderness. Equally, life for the Christian community is very similar to the days of Jesus. We experience similar challenges, surviving and thriving, bringing hope to a world that is desperate for change, and sharing our love in the midst of crisis and injustice. As the early Christians experienced, and we still experience today, it can be risky and dangerous calling for change or offering our experiences to make life easier for others. In the midst of crisis and injustice, our calls for peace and reconciliation are often met with resistance and fear. It is during these moments of challenge and crisis that we must recall that the early church, the disciples, the apostles, and even Jesus faced ridicule and persecution. And in times of crisis, they found the only thing they could do was cry out in prayer. As we also know, this remains true today when we face crises and challenges. We have to pray, and we have to hold on to hope, even when it seems hope is lost or missing, or the information that the doctors and nurses are bringing to us isn't necessarily hopeful. But as Jesus followers who are faithful, we are reminded that hope changes the world, and hope inspires us to remain connected to each other and to God. Recognizing God remains with us, we are reminded by the proclamation made by Isaiah, "I am with you, do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand." Internalizing these teachings, we will be better prepared to respond and lead from the world from brokenness to wholeness, and from fear into faith. Thankfully, Jesus has prepared us for the world and the challenges ahead, so we are able to hold firm to faith and hope as we not just survive, but we thrive as a faith community. Thriving, we make disciples of the nations as we reveal God and as we overcome obstacles and challenges. Equipped with our survival training manual, we travel with Jesus through every obstacle because he has trained us not to just survive, but to thrive. Hold on to hope and pray.